this video, we are going to install the inlays. I'm going to use epoxy to glue them in. We got to put in the frets, got to bind the fingerboard, do the nibs. Oh, we're going to radius the fingerboard, install the frets, get those crowned and polished. No, so we're going to install the frets. Let me think about this. Okay, so get the frets installed. So install the binding. We're going to file down for the nibs. Then we can crown and polish the frets. So stick around. So now I want a route for the inlays, but I'm realizing I don't have the right size template. This isn't going to work. I'm going to have to come up with plan B. So this is the template I have. And when I hold it up to the drawing, you can see they start out okay. And as we move farther up the fingerboard, we start to lose our placement. I can't use this template really. The size is not quite right either. The width on these don't match up with the inlays that I have. They're just a little bit too large. I've done a little bit of research on this and I've come up with a way that I think will work for me that won't be too challenging. First, I'm going to get it placed in the right position using my calipers. And once I get it set, I'm going to score around it with a sharp blade. And then I'll go back and I'll deepen that score. I'm going to route out a pocket just by hand, staying away from the score mark, so I can go back with a chisel and start removing material. So there's the first one. Now I just have about 8 more to go. Just going to continue with this same process all the way down the line. So I did get all the inlays fitted and ready to glue in place without too much gapping. I did get one little spot that is a little wide, and I did end up putting a little donor piece in there and sanding it flush, and that pretty much disappeared. Here I'm using a hand plane to rough in the radius, so after I glue in the inlays, there's not so much sanding to do. The gluing process is pretty straightforward. I mix up some epoxy with some of the rosewood dust from the fingerboard and just filled in the pocket, inserted the insert. This is a 15-minute epoxy, so I have a little bit of time before I clamp it all down and let it sit overnight to cure. Now I'm ready to do a rough carve on the back of this neck. I'm going to kind of get this roughed in just to relieve some of the meat that's on this neck. So when I do my leveling and radiusing on the fretboard, I can put a little back bow in it just to preload the neck. And this helps not stress out the truss rod so much. Now I'm ready to level and radius the board, but I don't want it perfectly flat with the truss rod loose. So what I want to do is preload it by putting a little bit of a back bow in the fingerboard. Has it so I have a little bit of room to move with this truss rod. So if I level it right now, get it perfectly flat under string tension. If there's not enough string tension on it to pull the board into a forward bow slightly, I have no adjustment with this truss rod. So by putting a preload on it, gives it a little bit of room for adjustment. Now I can level the board, and I'm going to give a little bit of a fall away as well from about the 15th fret, 17th fret or so forward, and get this nice and flat and radius to the 12-inch radius. I kind of roughed it in with my plane. I'm going to use a radius beam that's 12 inches, and I'm going to start flattening this board. The other thing I want to show you, so I got a little bit of tension on that truss rod. So I'm flat, 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 fall away. And then if I loosen, if I back off on the truss rod, now you can see it's got a little bit of a forward bow. That's exactly what you want. So now with string tension, I'll never have no adjustment on the truss rod. Now I'm ready to move up the grits and get the frets installed. What I did is I did a section of them, did about 11, 12 frets, and I got them clamped. Gonna let the glue set up and make sure they don't move, and then I'll come back and do the next section. So now I got all the frets in, except for the first one. I ran out of material. Gotta wait for the mailman to bring me some more. Now to file the ends down, I'm using a file with a smooth edge on one side to right up against this mahogany here, so I can take this down flush to the rosewood. I've got a piece of binding that I'm going to use to bind this fretboard, but I want to get them straight and flat before I do that. So I'm just going to use this heat gun and melt it, and it'll flatten right out. Not really melt it, just heat it up to a point where it becomes pliable. Now the fret ends are all filed and sanded flush with the edge of the fingerboard. And I'm ready to glue down the binding. Now for a little bit of extra holding power, I'm going to use this strip of maple. There we go. Let that dry. Come back and do the other side the same way. Now it's been 12 hours. The glue is fully cured. Let's take off all the tape and see what we got. All the joints look pretty tight. There's a lot of glue squeeze out and cleanup to do. I still have the end graft to do, but first I want to clean this all up and get all the nibs carved. Now I want to start working on the nibs. So it's pretty proud right now of the frets. And in case you don't know what nibs are, it's those little protrusions of binding on the sides of the frets that you see on the Gibson. Kind of like on this 335 I'm working on. These are called the nibs. The first thing I want to do is go with my hand plane to try to knock a bunch of this down. I want to be careful because I don't want to touch the frets. I do have it set a little bit heavy because I don't want to sit here for days doing this either. So here goes. Okay, that's pretty good. So I seem to have lost about 2 hours of footage of me carving these nibs down to the fret level and down to the fingerboard level as well. But here I'm taking a file and doing all the fine tuning, getting it so it's flush all the way around the frets as well as with the fingerboard. Okay, now I have all the nibs filed out. And one thing I'm noticing, it just feels, I mean, it's definitely a little bit sharp coming this way. But if we look at the plan, we look at the way they contour the nibs, they got that 35-degree approximate angle that looks to come pretty flush with the top of the fret. So I did this one over here. I think this is how I'm going to do them all. So this first one, I took a file and just rounded this off slightly. It just makes it feel a whole lot more comfortable. This one's, that's going to be sharp. It's going to feel weird playing it. This one feels much more comfortable. It might even need a little bit more. But that's basically what I'm going to do next. Let's go and put in this little primary bevel and then round off each fret within the fret. Leave the nibs intact. I think I'm just going to use a sanding block to put that bevel in there. I feel like I have a lot more control with this. And then from here, I'll take a little file and just round off this edge here. That gives it a really smooth, comfortable feel. You know, there were so many little details that went into finishing off this fingerboard, and there's quite a few more to come, but I think it did come out pretty damn good. If you think so, drop me a comment. And I didn't really get around to leveling or polishing these frets. I was going to do it, but I ran out of time, so that'll have to wait until the next episode. Go ahead and hit that bell icon so you'll be notified and you won't miss that. And if you think I worked extra hard in this episode, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's free and it helps a guy out. Alright, I'll catch you in the next video. Peace out.